I beat you to it, Lee.
Okay. Sorry.
I didn't see the whatever you sent out in Slack.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Sorry. Thank you for the heads up. There you go. So yeah, here I'm just requiring faker. I do want to point this out that this can be a nice thing to do with your seed file is just destroy everything before you reseed. This way I know I'm going to have 10 subs in my database whenever I seed my database. Because let me comment this out, just destroy all, and just to show you, not that it really breaks anything, but if I do a Rails DB seed, see that seeded. So now I have 10 subs because I'm putting out right here my sub.all.size. But if I keep running this seed file, well, now I have 20 subs. Now I have 30 subs, which is fine. But I think the nice thing about a seed file is whenever you run it, you kind of know, you have an idea of what your database looks like. So if I do this destroy all, every time I run my database, I'm just going to clear anything that was created, and I know I'm kind of starting out with 10 random subs. So cool. So there's that. So I've created some fake data. The next thing I want to do is let's go into our routes file. And I know I have this static home, but really we want to, instead of going here, that was just to kind of test, I want to go to my subs controller to the index method. Now, if you remember, we did in setup, we did create a subs controller. Like I said, it's stubbed out these methods. So I actually want to show you this. Let's go ahead and go to like refresh our localhost 3000. Wow, this is like automatically working. What's going on here is the way I can create my controller is it automatically created this index.html ERB file in my subs folder. And even though there's nothing in this method with Rails MVC, Rails will look for, a file named whatever this method is. So it's going to look for an index.html, .erb.
Sorry, what did you put in routes?
Subs index.
I got an error for some reason. Okay.
What's the error? Do you have an error or?
Yeah, it says syntax error, unexpected end. So I guess I have too many ends.
Yeah, so you probably have an extra end here or something. Or just select that out. All right. So yeah, this automatically looks for this file name index.html in the views folder, which it's here, but we're not using ERB, so we can just have that. I could come in here and change this, but we're gonna replace this with React. But just to show you why that's magically working, that's how that's happening. Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead, and since I really want to dive into like the routes and look at what's going on here. So let's go to our routes file. And as I was talking about earlier, let's start defining our routes, which is really kind of a defining a rough API. It's not technically an API, but it is. It's what our API is going to look like. So we want to do. We can just fill out all of our CRUD actions right now. We're maybe getting a little more familiar with this. So let's kind of try to do this. So let's do our get subs. Where should that go?
Subs show.
This one should go to,
Isn't this also index? Oh, yeah.
yeah, this one should go to the index. So now we have two routes that are actually taking us to the same spot. So we have a route that goes to our index, and if we go to /subs, that goes to our index. Someone said show. If I'm going to show a particular sub, what do I need in my URL?
The ID.
Yeah. So for that one, I need to give it the ID. All right. Let's do, what about to get the form?
That'll be subs new.
Yep. And then that would be subs new. And then to post, if we want to create a sub, then we just we do post request to subs, and that's going to go to our create. What's another one that we need?
Edit.
Edit, yeah, so edit, what HTTP method is that?
Get.
Get
That one
is-
put.
Yeah, it's put.
Oh, I thought that was for update. Sorry.
Yeah, don't we need to get the form for edit and then post it after? Or put, or sorry, not.
Oh,
post,
I see what
but
you're saying.
patch?
You're saying we need to do a get to get the form. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you're talking about this one. So we need to do a get request to edit. This gets our form. So this would go to edit. And we can like leave a comment here, like this is all, this gets all subs. This gets one sub. This gets our form for a new sub. This adds, this takes data from form, adds to DB. Okay, so this one, yeah, this is form for editing a sub. Okay, and then yeah, sorry, I got that confused. So we're going to do a puts to subs. So for updating the sub, we need the ID of the sub to update. Where does this one go? Subs controller
Update.
update. Yep. So this updates sub to DB. And then there's one more, or actually we can also do, I don't want to go into the difference between put and patch, but there are actually two methods for updating that we could define for updating to our database. So both of a put and a patch will both update. So I'll just define both of those. And then we have our last one, which is a delete request to subs ID. This goes to our subs. I can never, for the life of me, remember this. I think it's destroy. That's where it should go. Yeah. And this destroys sub from DB. So this really defines, it's not technically an API, but I can kind of see, hey, if I do a get request to subs, that takes me to my subs index method, and that should return all subs. I'm going to select this one out so you have a reference to it. Okay. So there's actually a shorthand to do all this. I still recommend you type these out because I think it's a really good, because you're just kind of saying this in your head. Like, this is exactly what you're doing. And this is such an important part of Rails MVC, is understanding what is actually happening in this file, like what this file is doing. But there is a shorthand. I could comment this out. I could do all of this code in this one line of code, and Rails is going to do this for me. Go resources subs. And that will generate all of these routes for me. I'm going to leave. And if you want to check your routes, remember you can go to localhost 3000 and actually you can just type in any route you don't have defined. There's technically, you can go, it's Rails info routes, Rails/info/routes. This one might be a good one to bookmark. Or like I said, and this shows you all of your paths. You could also, if I misspell this and just give a 404 error, it does show it here anyway. So it can really just go to any route you don't have defined and it'll pull this up. So notice I have all of these paths defined for me. My get to subs, that takes me to my subs controller, to my index method. If I do a post request to/subs, that takes me to my subs create. And you can kind of ignore these ones down here, like the action mailer and all of this stuff. And see, all I have is that resources subs. Let's talk about a custom route really quick. Let's say I do a get request to tacos yo. And this goes to, I don't know, words, pound, hot dog. I'm just kind of creating random words here to stretch your thinking. So let's say this. Let's say I create a React component. I'm going to go to my components folder. I'm just going to call this I don't know, treasure. This is our hidden treasure. We got to find this file. We got to render this file, treasure.js. I'm just going to take what I have inside of home, copy and paste it, switch this to treasure, just rename this treasure and this to treasure. And then, not that it really matters. I'm just going to in here, just say yay, you found me. Okay. So we have this file, this React component or this view that we want to render. I want to see this on my browser. So if I go back to my routes, what's the URL of the website I should go to? What's the path?
Tacos, yeah.
Yeah, I should go to localhost 3000 tacos yo. anyone guess what error I'm going to get when I go here?
You don't have a words controller?
Yeah, I don't have a words controller, so let's see that. So that's what this is saying, uninitialized constant words controller, because yeah, I don't have a words controller. So let's generate a words controller, Rails G controller words.
Do you also need a tacos yo model?
No, I do not, because that is just the path. I'm just doing a get. So if I go back to my code, this is if I do a get request to tacos yo, it's just going to say, hey, go to the words controller. This is like a map. This is like, hey, if I get this, go here type thing. That's really all this routes file is doing.
Do we need a word model? Just out of curiosity.
Let's look at that. So we have this Rails G controller words. And so now let's refresh this. Any guess on the error now?
We don't have that defined in our controller.
Yeah, we don't have the hot dog method. So if we refresh, the action hot dog could not be found. So it's like our controller or this routes file, it directed us to the right place. It went to our words controller, and now it's looking for the hot dog method. We can't find it. So yeah, now we need to go to our words controller. Let's go ahead and define this hot dog method. So yeah, the question was, do we need a word model? Not like we have a static controller. We don't have a model. We generally you are going to have you're going to have a model and then you're going to have a controller for it. But it's it's not going to it's not going to break anything.
Okay. So we don't need one because we're not interacting with the database to do this, right? This is like a static page. The tacos yo is a static page, so it's not pulling anything from the database, and that's why we don't need a word model. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, technically, just to that's very accurate and close. But I'll just one small distinction is I could still have like a model maybe that didn't interact with the database. Like, for instance, I mean, just kind of, I did not do this on purpose, but like it might make sense to have maybe I have a word model that's like good at interact, like it knows, it just it does a whole bunch of Ruby functions on words. So it's kind of like that book nerd who knows how to do stuff with books. This would be like a word nerd who could maybe tell me if it's like an anagram or something, or how many letters it has. That I could put that logic into a word model. It doesn't necessarily have to interact with the database. But generally it is generally I'm going to have a model and that model is going to interact with the database. It doesn't have to though.
Okay.
But actually, let me take that back. If you do like a Rails G model, that's going to create a migration. And then when you run the migration, that's actually going to create a table in your database. So
So regardless of whether we have anything in that table, it will be there.
Yeah. So now we come to this hot dog method. So now we're in our controller, and now our controller just needs to say, hey, go to Mr. Bob Ross and render component. And what did I call? I already forgot what I called it.
Treasure.
So now a controller is oh yeah, go get that treasure component. And then the React's going to do its work. It's going to do its React thing and then get back the HTML. And then this hot dog method is going to render that page. Yay, you found me. let's say, okay, so that's how we can find, like, that's kind of like the MVC, just kind of made up example. So we can come in, we can define our own routes. You know, we can define our own controllers, and those controllers can have their own methods. We can definitely go away from this convention. This is just like the standard conventional CRUD actions, but we definitely might want to do our own thing. Like we might want to go to like subs, you know, and have that go to like the subs controller. And maybe we want to create a method that's like, you know, like top five subs. So, but this isn't going to work, right? Because I have like I already have this get subs. So I could maybe say like get to like the subs, like top 5 or something. Or subs top. So if I go to localhost 3000 subs top, that takes me to the subs controller to the top 5 method, and then the top 5 method would go interact with the database, be like, hey, give me the top 5 subs, give back the data, and then yeah, so forth. Maybe we'll do this one in a second, but the other thing I want to show just with routes really quick is like here we're passing an ID. And here I'm really making these words just random, so it forces you to think what these words actually are and what they're doing. So I'm going to call this like I don't know, like Bob Ross. I guess I have like a recent obsession with Bob Ross. I don't know why, but let's do this. So I'm just going to show this. So this is really, I'm just creating like this like this variable-esque type thing that I'm going to be able to send data. So if I go to tacos yo, and then if I append anything after that, it's going to match this route. But what's ever appended after tacos yo, it's going to be named Bob Ross. So it's like a key value thing. The key is going to be Bob Ross, and the value is going to be what's ever after that slash. So I'm going to tacos yo. Is my fave. Cool. So I'm still on that you found me. So how do I get this like is my fave? Well, let's go back to our code. Let's go back to our controller. All right, what did I call it? Words controller. So I want to grab that value from the URL. I'm just going to keep naming stuff, just unmeaningful names, because it's just going to make you think of what's going on. So let's go to like X, that's the best one because that's just random. So X equals params. Anyone know how I grabbed that value?
Bob Ross, right?
Yeah, it's going to be Bob Ross. It's what I named it in my routes file. I called it Bob Ross there. Here I'm like, if I'm following conventions and I'm being like, I want to be nice to myself and I want to name things appropriately, like I'm calling this, I can call this whatever I want, but I'm calling it ID because first of all, that's just conventional. And second of all, it makes a lot of sense. That's what it is. It's an ID of the sub. So it's a descripted variable name. But I can call that ID yo if I wanted to. That would still work. But that's going to make my code very confusing to reason about. Just like this example is getting pretty confusing because of how we're naming things. But yeah, the name of this is going to be Bob Ross. So my params, I get that through Bob Ross, and then I need to send that through props. Now I do have to call this props. That like needs to be called props. Let's do this Y. And then the value has to be X, because that's what I called it here. So I'm passing props, I'm giving it the key Y and the value X.
Why is the key Y?
Because I'm trying to be as like arbitrary with names as possible, because I want to show you where the names don't matter. So these are horrible, very like names. But it's kind of good to show you this way, because then it's, when you go through this, it's like, it's making you think about like, where are the things connecting? And because this will be a little bit of like a React lesson. So I'm sending props. It's just an object. It's a key value pair. The key name, the key is Y, and then X is the value. So then in my component, now I can do, is it props.x or props.y? And let me go back. Do I do props.y or props.x?
Why?
Yeah, y, because that's the key. And then the value is going to be, it's not going to be x, it's going to be whatever is inside of params Bob Ross. And that's going to be whatever is here. So let's go back, params.y. So if I refresh this, there's my fave.
What was connecting the hot dog method to the treasure page?
Okay, so yeah, in our words controller, here's our hot dog method. We render component treasure, and this treasure is going to match this name, treasure.js.
Okay, so hot dog is just another thing that's just there to confuse.
Yeah, yeah.
No, wait, that's important because
This is in our routes.
it's in the route. Yeah,
Go to the words controller to the hot dog
to
method.
the hot dog method. And then that tells you to go to the treasure
Yeah.
component. Okay.
Now, does treasure need to match the name of the component as well as the function in the component, or not necessarily?
Oh, I don't know I don't know if it's matching by the name. I don't know if it's matching by the name of the file or the name of the export behind the scenes. Because that's normally it would be, how would that normally be? I have no clue how Rails is doing that behind the scenes, but I'm going to name those two the same anyway, and I should.
Would you be able to change the name of the file right now and test that?
Changing the name of the file, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the name of the file because of how default exports work. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the name of the file, because let's just name this X, and I should probably restart my server on this one just to double check, but yeah, the more I'm thinking about it, it's got to probably be looking for the name of the file. Would be my guess, but let's see.
Wouldn't you have to change it in in the routes in the controller?
In my controller here?
Yeah, would you? Oh no. Okay,
Yeah,
you're
if I
keeping it the
change
name.
it here,
Okay.
that's definitely going to break.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's looking for the name of the file. This is working. I can't like say, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the name of the file that it needs to match. So if I do capital treasure, I need to do component treasure. So if I do that, treasures, then we get that lovely error.
Is that why we have to make a new file for every component?
Yeah, so every file you want to render is going to be its own component. But just a little, I mean, we're not going to do this yet, but just as an example, just a little React teaser. I can come in here and like create like a, I don't know, let's say like I want to do a button component. What we can do with React and what we're going to start doing once we get more into React, I can create a button component. It says button. We'll just keep this simple. I think Rails will do this for me. I can go into treasure. So here I create a button component. And then in my treasure, I can use that button component. Like, I mean, this is the syntax, how you do it. We haven't really learned about that, but let's see if that, oh, I need to go back to my words controller and fix that error. Treasure. There's my button component. So don't worry about that. I just, if you want, so for your controller, it's going to have to render a specific file, but we can actually make components in React and reuse them. But we'll talk about that next week. So don't worry about that. This is actually why React is this is one of the reasons why React is very useful. So we can create these components and then we can reuse them over and over again in our components. So it becomes like Legos. It's like we can have these little building blocks. We can just build higher and higher, more complicated components with smaller components. Cool. So yeah, there's a little demo on our custom routes. And really this, I think, if you can, and this is something I recommend you experiment on your own, is by doing like a GET request, just making up these random words and seeing if you can get it to work. Because if you can walk through, because I think part of the problem with when you start learning Rails, we get so hooked on conventions and things just work and they're just working and you really don't understand why it's working. Because you're doing a good job and you're like naming things right and you're following the conventions. So that's going to make coding easier. But if you can come in and do something like completely, unconventional and kind of bad styling, it's really going to stretch your thinking and you're really going to have to understand like how this is working. And so then I'll kind of catch those areas where you're confused. So do some examples like this on your own time. Because if you can follow this flow, then you have like a high level understanding of the Rails MVC. And in particular, like this route, how the routing kind of works. And let me just show you this also, like, we're going to this hot dog method in our words controller. I'm just kind of like breaking conventions. Like there's nothing to stop me from saying, hey, like using my sub model in my words controller. I can do that. Let's just do like sub dot first dot name, so I don't get a JavaScript there, but first sub. Okay. So I can go interact with other models in a different controller. I don't have to be like in my subs controller to interact with my sub model. I can be in like my words controller could talk to a sub model, it could talk to a words model, it could talk to whatever it wants to. This code is all visible So if I refresh that, there's my first sub name. But yeah, I'm kind of like, I want to show you that example, but now I'm kind of going to go back to Rails convention. That's really going to help us, especially for the next example. But it doesn't mean you always have to follow that. You might want to create your own custom routes that do other things than just these standard CRUD actions. Let's keep going. Okay, so let's go to our subs controller. Now something I want to do is, I'm going to kind of just slack this out. Let's just, normally, I think this is especially when you're starting out, not the way to do it. But I think this can be like a good little test for us, a good little mental exercise, is let's just go through and create and just do all these methods right now. Normally, I would say, hey, do the index method first and then test it. But let's just kind of go through with like the last couple days. Maybe you're starting to see, hey, this is just really repetitive, because it really is. So for our index method, we want to get all subs, right? Well, how do we do that? We do subs equals sub dot all. And then we can render. We're going to do this with React, so render components, subs, props, subs. Now, I don't have this made, but that's what we're going to do, right? We're eventually going to make a subs.js file.
I'm a little bit confused on props. Is it always just used in the controller?
Props is a React thing. So what it really is, and what's going on here is we just need a way for our controller. So remember, our controller is that middleman who gets information from the model and then needs to pass that information to the view. So the controller gets the subs from the model. So this is interacting with model. And then now the controller is handing these subs to the React component here.
Okay.
And let's just stub this out since we're on this topic. Let's go do subs. So now let's go build this React component out. So now when I go to my, where is it? App, JavaScript component, and I create this subs.js. And I'm just going to copy my home again. Switch this to subs and that to subs. Go ahead and switch this to subs. Now, so because this is just a function, right? This is a JavaScript function that is taking props as an argument. So what's really going on here is really, I mean, that's how we're able to pass that argument down to that function and it's just a Rails React thing. It's just how we do it in Rails and React. So we pass that down to this component as props. And then I can do like props.subs. And then I'm just going to do this JSON.stringify method. I'll slack this out. Oh, Elise is asking about the React extension that changes the color of the code. Which one is that? Prettier.
I think that one's bracket pair.
Is
So
it, is it bracket pair? Do you have bracket pair and it looks all nice like that?
yeah,
Okay. So yeah, bracket pair. See if that gets rid of it. Yeah, well. Still like it's styled, but bracket pair might style that as well, so. Cool. So yeah, now when we do that, so if we go to localhost 3000 subs, that should go to our model, grab all the subs, then give that JSON back to our view, and then our view or our React component renders that. I mean, we're not making it look nice, but it's at least working. Cool. Does that, Sydney, does that answer or help? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and do our show method. So what do we do for our show? For any like kind of general one, well, we need to find the thing to show. So we're going to create a sub variable and we can just do our params find. Oh wait, sorry. Might go interact with my sub model. So sub.find and then give it the ID. Well, how did we get the ID? Params ID. So then what, like, where's this params ID coming from? Well, this is like if after looking at that routes file, if I do a GET request, this is what the URL is going to look like. And then that's the name of it, params ID. So what's ever here is going to be the value of params ID. So back to my subs controller. Then I can go ahead and render component. Actually, just, we could test this out by saying this. I could say, hey, I do want to render the component sub and do props. Pass it the sub prop and sub.
Can you Slack out what you have in subs.js at all?
Yeah, I thought did I not? I did Slack that out.
Oh,
Cool. So that's what we'd want to do, but actually, if I wanted to test this, I actually have my subs component set up so that it could handle this. I just changed that to subs. The prop name would have to be subs, but then I could pass it the value sub. So there's a little brain teaser if you kind of want to like look at why that might work. So we can look at it now. I render my component subs, and then I pass prop with the key of subs and the value of my sub. And let's see if that works. Oh, I need to give it the ID. So I go to subs. What one do we have? We have ID 31 right there. So let's do ID 31. There we go. But yeah. But that was just kind of a demo. Really what I should do is create a new component sub that just handles one sub. And for now with React, you can really use this, that stringify method. If you're just trying to display it, that can be a useful one just to like check to see if it's working. So I could almost take this subs component, do a new file, sub.js, paste that in here, just switch that to sub, that to sub, that to sub. And this is like, I'm calling, and like in my props, when I pass it, the key was called sub. So I'd switch that to sub. Has anyone yet run into the experience where you look at a word like sub and it doesn't look like a word anymore?
Definitely.
Yeah, that definitely starts to happen because how many times have I said sub or subs in like the last 5 minutes? So, like, I mean, look at this code right here. Like, how many times is sub inside of here? Like 14 times, and there's not that many. So.
Yesterday, I was working with a bird model, and I kept being like, it's not an E, it's definitely an I. Like, I just started second guessing myself. Like, I know it's not B-E-R-D, but I just.
Yeah, you challenge yourself on spelling of the stupidest things. It's like, what? Yeah, I've definitely had that happen. It happens a lot, actually. So cool. So let's do, so I'm not going to do any more components. Let's just stub the rest of these out. So we have our new method. Well, what I want to do here is I want to do if I want to have a new sub, I first need to just render, the subs new page. We don't have that built, but this should be the form. Let's do our create. So if you remember for our create method, what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to create a private method that sanitizes like the parameters being sent, because someone's going to fill out a form and then they're going to send us some data. But we're kind of going to be like, hey, let's maybe not by default trust this data, or let's kind of make sure it's appropriate data for what we're trying to build. So I come here and I do the subs params, or sub params. And this is just going to be params dot require. So I'm going to require the name of my model. So I'm going to require sub be there. And then I'm going to permit all of the keys that are in my database. So I think we just had name for this one. This is just to make sure like someone's not adding other stuff or other data. Could maybe be malicious content potentially. So now we can come in here and we can try to create this sub, but we're not going to use the create method. We're going to use this new method. That's going to create a new sub in memory, but not to the database. And then we can try to save our sub. So yeah, if we successfully create a sub, this is where we want to do a redirect. So this would be like that 300 status, which is actually going to do a redirect, which is going to do another HTTP request. So if we want to go to our index method, we have these helpers. So this can be another place where this localhost 3000 Rails info routes can help you. If we want to do a redirect, we can go to the subs path. And that's actually just going to do a get request to /subs. Likewise, we could redirect to the root path. These go to the same subs index method. So redirect to root path.
Do you need an underscore between your to and root?
No. So this is the method redirect to, and then this is the path name. I'm gonna let's do our edit. So our edit, we want to do the same thing as the show method. At sub equals sub.find. Well, I'm kind of doing something here, and I could, also say, hey, we want to do this for our updates, and we want to do this for our delete, right? For the show, edit, update, and delete, I want to find my sub. Now I'm kind of duplicating some code here. So with the rels, I can actually throw this in a function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a def, and I'm going to do def set sub. And then I'm just going to take this method inside of here. Cool. So something we have with controllers that we get with Rails is something called callbacks. We get these controller callbacks. So I can actually call methods before we call one of these methods, or I can call them after. So there's kind of these, I can define these methods to get called at certain points. So I actually want to define this or call this before action. So what I can do is before action, I can say, hey, call this set sub method. But what's the problem? So this is going to call this set sub method before we call any of these methods. But can anyone see the problem with that?
Like the index and the new, the ones that don't want to call on a specific sub before they go, that would be a problem, right?
Yeah, so if I tried to call this set sub method, I'm not passing this params ID to those routes. So this is going to be nil. So I'm going to do sub.find nil. That's probably going to throw an error. It's like can't find sub with ID nil. So it blows up and we break our whole app. But I still want to do this. So what I can do here is I can add this only option. And then in here, I can throw all the methods that I want to call this on. So I want to call this on the show, on the update, on the edit, and the destroy.
Hey, why is it a problem to call it before index? What's inside of index?
So let's like this set sub method. I'm going to use this params ID. I'm expecting to get that ID params. If I go back to my routes, like this route is not getting that ID. Likewise with the new. So if I try to find params ID, that's not going to be, there's not going to be anything there. And then that's going to break my app. Is that, because this method will fail. Like if I do rel c, I do sub dot find, nil, that's an error. So if I call this method where I'm not getting an ID, that's going to break. Does that make sense?
I think so. So if you had done edit or create above index, then it would cause that same problem.
No, the order doesn't matter. So let's edit. So notice the methods I'm calling these on: show, update, edit, destroy.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to my routes. Notice, okay, my show method, that has an ID, that has that colon ID. My edit method, that has the colon ID. My update, that has the colon ID. My destroy has the colon ID. Those are all have, because think about it just logically, like all of those methods, I need to do something on a particular sub.
Mm-hmm.
Like show is give me one sub, edit is give me one sub, edits give me one sub, delete is delete one sub.
Okay, so the ID just doesn't exist with these other ones, and so that's why it would break if you tried to call it
Yeah,
on those.
exactly. Because I don't need to pass an ID if I'm getting all the subs, because that just grabs all the subs. So if I go to back to my subs controller. So there's that. Now there's one other, so now I can technically, I don't need this line of code in here. Because really, before the show method is called, my set sub is called, and then, this method is called, and we set that sub. So it's defined right there. There's going to be one this is going to break, but and this is probably going to give us a weird error, but this is a scoping issue. I'll give you that hint. Why is this going to break? And any ideas what to do to fix it? Because I can show this. I go to my localhost. So I changed this in subs. So undefined local variable method sub. So yeah, if I type sub right here, that's undefined. So it's saying, hey, right here, this blue sub, that's undefined.
So in the set sub method, if we changed sub to an instance variable, would that fix it?
Yes, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to make this an instance variable, because now this at sub will be visible throughout our app. So that means I need to change that. Well, we really don't need this here, but now I want to, would make that an instance variable. But let's just go to our show method. So I changed it to an instance variable here in our set sub method. And now I make that an instance variable. Refresh. It's working. So this in index, this subs right here, this doesn't need to be an instance variable because I'm defining it within the method and I'm using it in the method. And I don't use it anywhere else. And that could be nice because maybe I have another function called like def, we said like the get top 5 or something. And then this method is like subs dot limit or subs dot all dot limit 5. So part of the reason we have these scoping rules is since these are not instance variables, even though they're named the same, these are two different things because they're scoped to just their function. So I can reuse, because this, maybe I want to reuse this subs name and not have to like worry about like, well, is it that or that? But maybe I do want to reuse this sub variable because I want to use it in different functions. Well, let's make that an instance variable. We actually, this one's a little, we actually kind of want to make this one a instance variable too.
Why?
This, okay, so this is a little, this is a kind of a weird one, but because maybe in our form, I'll show you this render new. Let's think about this case if we're creating something. If we're creating something and it doesn't work. So what would happen is I set my, so someone gets the form and we run this method. And actually I need to do this first. Oh, wait. Oh, how do we do this with React on Rails? No, okay, yeah. Oh man, let's see if this one works. But okay, we're getting into a difference between redirect and render. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is, and this is something I'm not gonna make you do for the homework. Like you don't have to worry about bad input for like the first couple weeks. We'll get to bad input later, but I kind of want to explain what's going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to define a sub right here, just so I don't get like an undefined error when I pass this down. Or actually, I actually don't even need to do that. Like I'm just going to pass this sub, and I really don't care if this is defined or not. So I do a new form. So let's just think about the first time I do this. So at sub is not going to be defined because I'm not calling this set sub method here. So this is just going to be undefined or nil, which is fine. React's going to handle that. It's not going to be an issue. But then they get that form and then they hit the submit button. And then we do this. We say our at sub equals sub.new, subparams, and let's say it fails. Well, if it fails, we're actually just going to render new again. So we're going to hit this else statement. We're going to render new, which is actually, this is going to give us the ability to go back to the new form and leave our fields as is. So think if you're like filling out a form and you screwed one thing up, we want to take the user back to the form. And then also when we do at sub.save, that's if it fails, remember how that gives us like the errors.full messages. Then we can go back to the form and then we can use those messages to give the user like, here's why you failed, like, oh, this email was taken. But yeah, I'm going to just not have you worry about that for now. But I'll leave that as a comment. So now I don't need, in my edit, update, and delete, I don't need to define these because now they're already going to be defined because I'm calling these methods. So my delete method, I could just say at sub.destroy. redirect to, what did I call it? Root path. Cool. I think, yeah, I'm going a little overboard or over time. Let's take a break. If you're burned out, you can just hop off now. Come back at 12:05. If you got any questions though, I'll stick around. And I'm going to add and push this up to GitHub.
So what's the point of having a set sub function if you're just going to use that instance variable? Why not just have it by itself? If you're not calling set sub anywhere.
So I am calling this method before these actions. So before action, so what this is saying,
Oh,
or you do anything, call this method, but only call it before on these methods.
okay. So the first thing that it does when it gets to show is call set sub.
Yeah,
And then when it gets to update, it calls that. So it's basically like having it inside of the method.
exactly. Yeah. So it's
Okay.
like, it's really like in our delete, and we call set sub. I mean, technically, since it's a before action, it's like it would be called like right there, and then we would call delete.
Okay. All right. Thanks.